In this segment, I'm going to take a look at the Line tool, and that's found on the left-hand side of your workspace on the Designing toolbar. And what you'll find, first of all, is that there's two options for the Line tool. For example, we've got an open line and a closed line. Now, before I get started, I think I'll just go Control-A and Delete to clean up my desktop again. And I'm going to go ahead and choose the Line tool. Now, before I choose the Line tool, I'm going to take a look at the flyout for the Line tool because it's very different than the flyout. All of the tools we've looked at so far have been tools to fill objects in. But the Line tool is not meant to fill it in as much as to create stitches along a line. And so the types of stitches are very different. So I'm going to fly this open, and we'll see all the different types of lines that we can create. So we have the single run line, we've got the triple run line, we've got a sculpture run line, this is motif run line, we've got a CandleWicking line, we've got a backstitch line, and we have a stem stitch line. So I can take a look at each of those different types of lines, but generally speaking, the two tools are the open line or the closed line. See, all of the same types of stitch types are available for the closed line and the open line. So what's different is with the open line, if I draw a shape, and I'll just go ahead and draw a simple triangle, and when I hit enter, it places stitches along the line that I drew. And because I chose the single run line option, the stitches go forward, 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 just like the straight stitch on a sewing machine. Now if I choose the closed single run line tool and draw the same triangle, put in 1 point, I'll put in 2 points, I'll put in 3 points, so more or less drawing the same shape, but now when I hit enter, it closes the shape. So with the main difference is with the open line tool, you can draw a line that starts in one place and finishes in another place. But with the closed run line tool, you draw the beginning of the line, and then the software is going to close that shape and by connecting your last point with your first point. Now, like I showed, there's several tool options, so you can choose from the single run line. If you'd rather do a triple run line, you go ahead and you choose triple run line, and then you draw the line. And again, it's left click for corner points, right click for rounded points, and when you hit enter, fills it in with thread. Now the main difference between a single run line and a triple run line is this. The single run line just goes forward, 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 forward. Now the triple run line goes forward, and then comes back. Forward, forward, back. Forward, forward, back. So it always takes 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And the result is each stitch gets sewn once, twice, 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times. Once, twice, 3 times. So that's called the triple stitch. And you have another option under the line tool, and that would be the sculpture run line. And again, I'll just draw a simple line here and hit enter. And with the sculpture run line, the way the stitches go, it's forward, then forward, and forward a 3rd time, then backwards 1 stitch. Forward, 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 back. Forward, 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 back. So the idea is you end up with 1 stitch that's done single, and the next stitch which is done triple. And it gives sort of a handmade stitch look to the sculpture run line. So because it goes forward 1, 2, 3 times, then it steps backwards once, then forward 3 times, 1, 2, 3. The stitch that's done where it steps backwards, that stitch gets sewn 3 times. The next stitch gets sewn only once, and then the following stitch will get sewn 3 times again. So that's the sculpture stitch. And let's see, another option would be your motif run line. Now, remember the motif fill. I'm going to draw a line, hit enter, and now you'll see the motif. Whoops, I didn't mean to zoom out so quickly like that. Touchy mouse. This motif run line puts the motif along the line that I drew, and so in this case, Remember, with the motive fill, we could choose from a set of patterns. Well, very much the same with this motive run line. If I select that object and ask for the object details, you'll see that it's a line stitch, it's a motive run line, and it's using pattern flora number 1. And I could change that to be any number of patterns that there are in this tool. And also, just like in the motive fill, I have the ability to choose from different sets. So for example, this is the embroidery gallery set. If you want, you can look in the blackwork set. And like I'd said earlier, I'll show you later in the video how you can create your own motifs for use along a line or in a weave fill. So we'll look at the blackwork set, choose some fancy cross, and say OK, and now that becomes the motif that sews along my run line. So let's take a look at the run line tool again. So now we have, that's the motive run line. Another option would be the CandleWicking line. And again, if I just put in, I'll select the CandleWicking line and put in a set of points, 1, 2, and hit enter. And you'll see here that we get a small little starburst that sews along our lines, and that's known as the CandleWicking stitch. And in this case, the object details, if I ask for the object details, is the size and spacing of the little candle wick. So the candle wick's 3 millimeters size, the spacing 7 millimeters. If I reduce the spacing, let's say to 4 millimeters, you'll see more of the little candle wicks along my line. Another type of line is going to be the backstitch line. And in this case, I'll draw the line. The stitches sew forward and they come back before they go forward and back. But in this case, when they go back, if I open up the object details, you can see the way that we can adjust this. So there's the stitch length, but we also have the stitch thickness. And what that talks about is, instead of going straight back into the center of the stitch, it steps backwards and off to the side a little bit. So that's the thickness, and the overlap is how much does it step backwards. Right now it's set at 30. If I change that to 70, you'll be able to see the difference in the overlap. See, 70% of the stitch is only this small part in the middle that's not doubled up. So that's your back stitch line. And I believe there's one more option, and it was called the stem stitch line. Let's just see if we can open that up. So the stem stitch line. And with the stem stitch line, perhaps I'll just draw a straight line. The stitches go back and forth, very similar to a satin stitch, except for in this case, if we take a look at the object settings, we have the line thickness, so that's the distance from one side of the line to the other side of the line. That's the thickness. Spacing, that's basically your density, the distance between the rows of stitches. And an angle line, so they're on an angle, a 45-degree angle. So if I wanted this to look similar to a regular satin line, I would need to change my stitch spacing to be heavier, like a 0.4 stitch spacing, and take my angle line and put it back to the 90-degree line. And if I said OK, you would see that it looks very much like a standard satin stitch column. So the stem stitch is just a very unique type of satin column. And the reason I say that is because we actually have a tool called the Satin Line, and if I was to use that tool, you'd find, if I go click and hit enter, the Satin Line gives you a satin stitch based upon a line. And in this case, if I ask for the object details of my satin line, you'll see that it's got a width of 2 millimeters and a density slider to go less or more. That's a satin line. Now, just as in any other type of object, even if you choose to create, let's say, a backstitch with this object, you can open that up and change that backstitch to be any number of lines. For example, if I would rather have this be triple run line, and I change the backstitch to triple run line, no problem. So when you're creating these using the tools, that is the stitch that you'll get. But if you decide to change it afterwards, it's no problem. So for example, if I choose to do like we created this CandleWicking line. So I can select the CandleWicking line and then decide, actually, we've decided to go with a satin line and change it to a satin line. And I could take that satin line that I created and say, well, actually, I think this one, I'd like to be a CandleWicking line. So you can see they're quite interchangeable. And generally speaking, you're drawing a line. And so you have the line tool, open line tool, and closed line tool. We've got an open satin line tool and a closed satin line tool. And again, if I use the closed satin line tool, I draw the line, and the software will automatically close it for me. So when I hit enter, it finishes the shape and puts a satin border around it. So that's the line tool. And like I showed, there's very different stitch types for the line tool than there are comparatively with the parallel fill tool, which has different types of weave and satin fills that fill in that shape. Now, when you choose Reshape on an object like a line, and I'm just going to select maybe this satin line and bring it over. If I choose the Reshape tool, I have the ability to adjust, first of all, the exit point and the entry point of this shape. And because it's a satin line, I actually have a bit of I'll show you this very closely. This is the stitch width, and I could use this. If I made this longer, it will make the column fatter. If I make this shorter, it'll make the column smaller. So those 2 points represent the width of my satin line. And just notice that the satin line that I drew goes right down the middle. So it puts the satin column an equal distance from that center line. And that's how that works. So if I choose to reshape, let's say just a standard run stitch, whoops, a single run line, and I take a close look at it, and I choose Reshape, again, I could change the exit point or the entry point of that line, and notice the exit point moves with the entry point. So if I decide that this, because it was a closed shape, if I put the start point right there, it puts the exit point right there. As opposed to the open line, so if I made myself a single run line that starts, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. That was, see, I have this object selected, and if I go and I start trying to change the line type, it'll actually convert the line to be a new line type. I need to first of all unselect that. Then I can choose to create a new line. And I'm just going to go ahead and create a new open line, whoops, and show that if I select Reshape on that open line, I can move the starting point, but not the exit point. So I can have it start in any place that I want to, but it's going to not necessarily adjust the exit point. It automatically updates that exit point to be where it seems to be the opposite side of the line from your starting point. So that's Reshape when you talk about line stitches. And so that's how to use the open line and the closed line, satin line, closed satin line, and how to select and reshape those objects as well.